Okay, we're ready to begin, I guess. Arlene? So, here we go. So, let's kick off the first annual, I hope, cryptocurrency conference, Bitcoin and the Future of Money. I'm so glad you came. This is a wild idea and a wild speculation, but it seems to have worked out very well. We've got a fabulous program for you today. You'll notice that in the audience, among the participants, there are plenty of people who know just as much or more than the actual speakers. We have some extraordinary experts from all over the world here with us. I mean, this is sort of rock stars of the Bitcoin world here. It's sort of intimidating for me. And I'm thrilled. I hope that we all just, spend today learning from each other. One of the difficulties at a meeting like this is that there are a lot of people here who came just without, anybody, just completely alone, and they don't know others. So if you see somebody who seems to be sort of shy and standing off in the corner and not know anybody to go talk to, just go over and talk to him or her and make them feel welcome. Everyone here has things to learn from each other. There are plenty of people here I've talked to who are just completely new to the Bitcoin world, which is great. I feel like we can also learn from people who have questions about just getting into it. I mean, I have to tell you my own personal story here. For 2 years I was being hammered with information about Bitcoin, and I kind of had this amazing filter. I just kind of excluded it from my brain. I thought that's all I need is another ridiculous, geeky technology. Especially one that pertains to money, sure that it has nothing to do with reality. And I was ignoring it, in a sort of obtuse way. And then, this past February, I was at a conference in New Hampshire, and I was surrounded by this sort of, the type sort of dedicated Bitcoin people, right? And there's like, you have got to get into this thing. And I didn't have any good excuses at all at that point. So they surrounded me for lunch, and explained the thing to me, gave me Bitcoin. I felt it in a sort of wonderful physical way arrive on my smartphone. And that was the beginning of my enlightenment, So in many ways, I'm very new to this world. So many of you in this room are old timers at it and know a lot more than I do. But I've been with it long enough to know that this is a hugely significant thing. I mean, we're entering into a new age of cryptocurrency. I think we're going to see fulfilled the prophecies of some of the greatest economists in history over the next few years. And this conference results because of this sort of conviction that I had some sense that the next generation would ask, well, what did they do in 2013? Who was talking about Bitcoin in 2013 in light of economic theory, in light of the philosophy of the social order, who was bringing to bear issues of law and the bigger questions of human liberty on this issue of cryptocurrency. And I didn't really see anybody else doing that, so it struck me and others at the time that we should just do it. And here we are 6 months later, and it's actually happening. So I'm grateful to all of you for coming. Especially want to say thank you to all of our sponsors, and I want to make sure not to leave anybody out. In the early days of this conference, I talked to the Foundation for Economic Education about it, and Carl Oberg there. I mean, you approached the topic a little bit cautiously. I called him up and said, "Listen, Carl, I've got this idea to do this conference on cryptography and Bitcoin." And I expected him to say, well, that's just absurd. We need to let this issue kind of rest a little bit. And also, this was in May, so we'd already been through the bump up and then the collapse again in the price. So there was like Bitcoin is more mainstream now than it was even this past spring, And so for me to call him up and suggest that he back this conference, I thought it was implausible and risked my own credibility. But instead, he said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. We're there. And he immediately put the institutional backing of the Foundation for Economic Education behind it. And that was the thing that gave me some sense that this could actually work. And then next came Tony Gallipi from BitPay. We wrote and said, hey, are you interested in helping with this? And he said, sure, it sounds like a great idea. So at that moment I realized, okay, this could actually work. Students for Liberty jumped in. Lana Bitcoin, they're the ones with the ATM in the back of the room. So exciting. The Bitcoin Foundation, of course, that was big. Students for Liberty over here jumped in and supported what we're doing. Students for Liberty, I don't know how many of you know about this organization, but it's the most sort of booming, growing, fabulous student organization in the libertarian idea space. I went to their International Students for Liberty conference this last January, and I think there was something like 2,000 people there, you know? It was just really exciting and thrilling what SFL is doing. So some people there realized that Bitcoin is very cool and they wanted to be involved. So I'm thrilled to have them there. Let's Talk Bitcoin with Adam Levine, who is here, and he provided also the lanyards for Let's Talk Bitcoin. Invictus Innovations is here with Charles, and BitPay I already mentioned, and then on the back of the program, TrueCoin is also here. So all these people supported us. I'm really glad that last night we heard from Tatiana, who played guitar for us and sang so beautifully. I got to know Tatiana in California just recently. We drove from Los Angeles all the way to Malibu, and the whole time I was sort of torturing her with Justin Bieber songs. So thank you, Tati. I'm a big fan of Justin Bieber. She said he's just a fake auto-tune artist, and she would show me what real music sounded like. And I heard that last night, so thank you, Tatiana. It was beautiful. And then also tonight, we have this really exciting thing happening. The famous couple that's living off Bitcoin, Becky and Austin Craig, have graced us with their presence. They've come all the way from all around the country. I guess they've been traveling everywhere, and this is one of their stops before they take their big international trip. So we'll be toasting them tonight, and they'll be giving a talk about what it's like to live on Bitcoin. They almost didn't get here because they had a problem finding a taxi driver that could accept Bitcoin. So I can't even imagine what it must be like for you guys. I mean, I don't even think it would have been possible a year ago, right? But more and more, right? So it's a beautiful thing. So I'm so grateful to you for coming and so excited about this event. We've got so many wonderful speakers. I'm really convinced that we're living in the emergence of a new world that's going to change the total institutional character of money and financial systems around the world. We're seeing every day the development of new institutions that are supporting Bitcoin. We're seeing a radical challenge to the monetary elites, which is an extraordinary thing. I mean, Bitcoin is in so many ways a system that's sort of risen from the bottom up. You know, it developed organically out of the innovative systems that have changed the world over the last 20 years. I suppose that 10 years ago, nobody would have imagined that code and digital media would eventually challenge the whole idea of government currency as a government currency monopolist. It just would have been inconceivable, and yet it's happened over the last 5 years. And day by day, we're seeing what's going on, right? The skeptics and the critics and the doubters are sort of gradually melting away, just one by one. A year ago, you're into Bitcoin, people think you're out of your mind. Now they're kind of like respecting you a little bit more, People are getting a better sense of what's possible. What's happened here is that the market and the magic of the digital marketplace has taught us something we didn't know before. Very few people would have imagined that such a thing could exist, that you could assemble a protocol, that constitutes the perfect money, and that it could be thrown out on an open forum, and it would have these elements of a distributed network and an open source code and cryptography and a peer-to-peer network, and that it would gradually, over the course of 8 months between January 2009 and October, achieve something like a market value, and that this would march forward and go and go and go. And I think it was February 2011, right, when we achieved dollar parity, which many owners of Bitcoin thought, oh, this is the magic place, this is the mark, this is the ultimate sell signal. and got rid of everything, right? If I had been a miner at the time, I would have done the same. But here we are now today with the dollar exchange ratio of Bitcoin at something like $130, $140. And even over the last 30 days, I've had people tell me, well, I don't believe Bitcoin would be worth anything were it not for these illicit drug markets and the dark net. And as much as I deeply regret what I consider to be outrageous attack on the Silk Road, nonetheless, the result of the last 48 hours is that the training wheels are off our beloved Bitcoin. So as of today, we're in a new world, and I think that even yesterday, Bitcoin was exchanging to the dollar even $1 or $2 higher than it was before the takedown. So we can talk about the Silk Road premium now that you have to pay. But, amazing. So everything has changed. I'm so enormously happy that we're having this conference today because, well, it comes at just the right time. In so many ways, it's been born yet anew. Let me suggest to you also, as we go through this conference, because people are always worried about this, please tweet whatever you like, whatever you feel like, whatever you object to, or whatever you think is cool. I've been using the hashtag cryptocurrencycon. Maybe you want to use that too. Take any videos, pictures, post them on Facebook, put them wherever you want, upload them on your own website. I consider this conference an open source protocol, you know, so no worries about anything. In so many ways, this conference is much like Bitcoin. I mean, implausible that it's happening, right? So we need to follow Satoshi's magic formula, open as possible. So anything you want to take a picture of, record, tweet, please do so. Status updates, you know, anything you want to. Street recordings, put them out there, that's fine. And don't be afraid to approach any of the speakers or any of the vendors here with any questions, or any of the federal agents for that matter, with any questions you might have about Bitcoin or their profession or, you know, anything like that. We're here to learn from each other. One of the beautiful things about Bitcoin is that nobody in this room knows everything there is to know. I mean, I was talking to Peter Serta this morning. He said that every time he comes to one of these events, he's always astonished at how little he knows. Now, this is like the biggest expert in Bitcoin I know, and he's always humbled at all the things he doesn't know. That's the nature of the information gathering system of cryptocurrency that's going on. I just want to mention two things from the point of view of monetary economics that I think are important, and they're important to me, so that's why I'm bringing them up. My doubts about Bitcoin began to melt away when I discovered something extraordinary about it. For 2 years, I had been giving lectures about the digital space as being a special kind of space that transcends the limits of scarcity, that it takes the limits of the physical world and immortalizes physical objects. Insofar as anything is digital, it becomes reproducible, immortalized, malleable. It takes on a special character. And I couldn't imagine that such a thing as money could ever exist in the space, because one of the major characteristics of money is that it has to be scarce. So how could this problem ever be overcome? In other words, the advantage of digital media is its sheer reproducibility. But like reproducibility in the monetary realm, it gives you terrible evils like the Federal Reserve, you know? Reproducibility is the last thing you want in a monetary sphere. Good money must be scarce, and it must be strict, and ideally it would be a form of property. So discovering that aspect of Bitcoin began to open up my mind to understand that the brilliance of the protocol is precisely its capacity for creating a kind of embedded scarcity itself. And looking into it further, I realized that Bitcoin what it's done is restored the nature of money as a kind of private property with titles attached to it, with ownership attached to it. And the more I began to look at it, the more I began to recognize a template of a monetary system that I had first read in about 1985. And it's a brilliant book by my friend and mentor, Murray Rothbard. And the book is called The Mystery of Banking. And it came out in 1983. And you can get it free online. I would urge you to look at it because here you find the model of what it means for money to really be private property, for there to be titles and ownership assigned to property. This is completely unlike anything we know from our current world, where there's this strange ambiguity about money. You know, most of the time when we're spending money, we're not actually exchanging property titles at all. We're actually just sort of coughing up our identities and asking to establish trust relationships, you know, with vendors, with credit cards. It's all based on these trust. It's not based on property exchange so much. So what the Bitcoin system does is it reestablishes property as the basis of money. So if you want to understand how that system works, I would suggest you look at The Mystery of Banking by Rothbard, because I think you get in that book a real vision of what once was, say in the High Middle Ages. And Rothbard recommended a gold standard, you know, to restore that relationship, which I think is, you know, my own opinion is the gold standard would be a beautiful thing if it actually came about, but there's like virtually no chance for this to ever happen. So, and in many ways, the cryptographic currency system is actually an improvement. But look at that book, 1983, The Mystery of Banking. I mean, I have this sort of fake dream in my mind that Satoshi Nakamoto, you know, sort of downloaded that book online, you know, read it and said, I can do this. I can build this system, you know. I don't know if that's true, but it seems. The other great book that I think you should look at is by F.A. Hayek. And it came out in 1976. And it's called The Denationalization of Money. And that's an extraordinary book because he dared to imagine that money could be wholly and completely separated from any aspect of public policy, both in its functioning and in its implementation. That's the great contribution of Hayek's denationalization of money. He imagined a future in which we would have monetary reform that began outside the realm of public policy. And nobody, to my knowledge, had ever imagined such a thing. It's a fascinating book to read because he seems like he's grappling with the ideas. And you almost get the sense that he feels like he's like the world's most dangerous intellectual for daring to imagine such a thing. You know, it's beautiful. So I have a few quotes from it just because it's so cool. Governments have at all times a strong interest in persuading the public that the right to issue money belongs exclusively to them. That's been going on for 2,000 years, he said. But he said there's no reason to doubt that private enterprise would, if permitted, have been capable of providing as good, or at least as trustworthy, coins. I like the fact that he uses the word coins. Indeed, occasionally it did, or was commissioned by government to do so. Yet so long as the technical task of providing uniform and recognizable coins still presented major difficulties, it was at least a useful task which government performed. Unfortunately, government soon discovered that it was not only useful, it could be made very profitable for governments, so long as people had no alternative but to use the money they provided. When one studies the history of money, one cannot help wondering why people should have put up for so long with governments exercising an exclusive power over 2,000 years that was regularly used to exploit and defraud them. This can only be explained by the myth that the government prerogative was necessary, becoming so firmly established that it did not even occur to professional students of these matters for a long time, including even the present writer, Hayek himself, to ever question this. Then he goes on, we have always had bad money because private enterprise was not permitted to give us a better one. Blessed indeed will be the day when it will no longer B, from the benevolence of government, that we expect good money. Very interesting, right? 1976. So I think of the ghosts of Hayek, the ghosts of Rothbard, with us here today. They were early, they saw what was possible. So many of you in this room are actively engaged in the great entrepreneurial task of bringing into being a new world of cryptographic currency, a currency that can liberate humanity from oppressive systems and invite the whole of the human race in the great project of building prosperity. So thank you so much for coming, and I'd like to invite our first panelists up, so we can do that now, and just feel free to talk, and we're going to get set up. Thank you so much again for coming.